I promised myself I would never live as a victim. Bobby Joe Long, thank you. Thank you for choosing me instead of another 17-year-old little girl.
On a chilly November night in 1984, 17-year-old Lisa McVey stepped out into the darkness after a long shift at her donut shop job. Little did she know, a night that began like any other was about to take a terrifying turn that would forever change her life. While every effort has been made to accurately recount Lisa's harrowing experience, the disturbing details regarding her abduction, sexual assault, and brutal captivity may be distressing for some viewers. Discretion is advised. Growing up in Tampa, Florida, Lisa's childhood was marred by unimaginable trauma. From the tender age of 14, she endured 3 years of relentless sexual abuse at the hands of her grandmother's boyfriend, who wielded a gun to torment her into silence. The cumulative toll of this horrific violation left Lisa feeling hopeless, even deciding to take her own life on that fateful November night. She poured her anguish into a heartbreaking suicide note, resigned to ending her promising future. As Lisa pedaled her bicycle home in the early morning hours, a man watching from his idling vehicle seized the opportunity to strike. Grabbing her from behind, he pressed a cold gun barrel against the terrified teen's head with a menacing threat, "Shut up or I'll blow your brains out." In a cruel twist of fate, her determination to live that night marked the start of a 26-hour nightmare of imprisonment, torture, and sexual assault. The depraved captor was Bobby Joe Long, one of the most sadistic serial killers in Florida's history. Blindfolded, stripped naked, and tied up in the killer's vehicle, Lisa fought to stay present and document every possible detail that could help identify Long. From the make and model aired in the blindfold's gap to tracking their direction of travel, she etched a trail of invaluable evidence into her memory. Upon arriving at Long's apartment, Lisa used her quick wits to preserve fingerprints in every room, leaving a forensic map for detectives to later follow. She even engaged Long in conversation to humanize herself, desperately pleading for her life and family as he repeatedly descended into violent rages. At last, Long inexplicably released Lisa roadside after over 24 hours in captivity, sparing her life but leaving her blindfolded for a harrowing, directionless escape. Despite courageously reporting the incident, police initially disregarded the teen's staggering account due to her lack of visible trauma. However, Lisa refused to let her tormentors strike again. She tenaciously recounted every graphic detail with Sergeant Larry Pinkerton, whose daughter's age struck a paternal nerve. When a new female victim emerged, killed in the same manner, Lisa insisted her kidnapper was the culprit. Ultimately, her first attempt to identify Long from a photo lineup brought his reign of terror to an end just 12 days after she slipped from his clutches. Lisa's clear recollection of his facial features and vehicle proved instrumental in his capture and prosecution. Once behind bars, the full depravity of Bobby Joe Long's crimes came into terrifying focus. With an introduction to Lisa McVey's background and her fateful abduction by the sadistic Bobby Joe Long at just 17 years old, Part 1 lays the groundwork for her unimaginable 26-hour ordeal of imprisonment, torture, and sexual assault that followed. Despite the horror she endured, Lisa's courageous acts of secretly collecting forensic evidence while gaining Long's trust ultimately led to his swift capture just days later. Her harrowing first-hand account directly identifying Long from a photo lineup proved instrumental to ending his deadly rampage. However, more shocking revelations about his disturbing double life as a serial killer still await. At Bobby Joe Long's highly publicized trial the following year, the full extent of his double life as a magnetic yet depraved serial killer was laid bare. Prosecutors built an ironclad case by combining Lisa's first-hand testimony with forensic evidence meticulously gathered from his apartment. Fingerprints, DNA samples, and other physical evidence Lisa courageously preserved all corroborated her retelling of the nightmarish 26-hour captivity. While Long's public persona portrayed him as an everyday family man and respected academic, the jury was appalled to learn about his twisted secret compulsions. Years before kidnapping Lisa, Long had been prowling the Tampa area to abduct, sexually assault, and ultimately murder women in shockingly brutal ways. One method involved tying up his victims before barbarically raping them over hours, even days, a terrifying prelude to Lisa's ordeal. Testimony revealed that even after brutally raping Lisa repeatedly at gunpoint, Long still couldn't bring himself to end her young life. Yet. But would the 17-year-old's crafty efforts to humanize herself and appeal to Long's remaining shreds of morality ultimately save her? It was pretty easy to tell from the very minute I grabbed McVey that she wasn't like the others. And that's probably why she's still alive, walking and talking today, Long confessed under police interrogation about Lisa's abduction. Throughout the trial, Long went on to admit in graphic detail the systematic rape and murder of an additional 10 women beyond Lisa. Jurors listened aghast as Long recounted how he initially gained his victims' trust by luring them through employment and dating ads. Once back at his apartment, his signature MO involved subjecting them to hours of torture before ending their lives. In a series of chilling confessions, Long grinned as he described the unimaginable suffering his victims endured right up until their final breaths. He revealed keeping sick trophies like necklaces and jewelry from his kills as personal souvenirs. Police photos backed up his haunting words by displaying the aging trinkets beside mountains of DNA evidence retrieved from Long's residence. Most disturbingly, Long admitted to assaulting, brutally slaying, and haphazardly disposing of Lisa's fellow captives with the same casual indifference as swatting a pesky mosquito. Only the former altar boy turned monster could pinpoint the depraved motivations for slaking his homicidal sexual sadism on these innocent women. In the aftermath of the vicious slayings jolting the close-knit Tampa community, the anguish of the victims' families reflected the profound trauma inflicted. Loved ones took the stand, seizing their final chances for long overdue answers, closure, and justice. Lisa McVey led the procession of devastating victim impact statements by locking eyes with Long and uttering, "Bobby Joe Long, thank you. Thank you for choosing me instead of another 17-year-old little girl." Her sentiment that divine providence alone spared her from a grisly demise like the other victims proved both haunting gratitude and a searing indictment of Long's depravity. Lisa regained her voice to advocate for the 10 women tragically silenced too soon by this remorseless serial killer. While loved ones validly seethed at the prospect of Long receiving a death sentence as small recompense, they needed finality. Betty Sims, the 76-year-old mother of victim Michelle Sims, looked Long squarely in the eye and said, "I forgive him because that's what God wants me to do. All I want to know is why." Though Long had shared chilling confessions with prosecutors, he refused to reply when Miss Sims begged to understand what caused her beautiful daughter's senseless murder. Even serial killers rarely confront what compels their unconscionable acts. For the devastated mother, Long's silence spoke louder than any nonchalant justification. As the penalty phase reached sentencing, Lisa reprised her crucial role by once more standing up to Long face to face. stoically donning a t-shirt reading "Long Overdue" in icy reference to his impending execution, she stared unblinkingly as the judge handed down the death penalty on all 10 murder counts. After years of unspeakable trauma and nearly joining Long's trail of victims, Lisa McVey reclaimed her power at long last. Her courageous act of beating the odds to escape this monster's clutches set off the domino effect leading to his eventual conviction and ultimate demise. Above all, she emerged not only as a survivor, but as a symbol of resilience to inspire other victims for generations to come. Disturbing new details surfaced during Bobby Joe Long's trial about the sheer depravity of his double life as a prolific serial killer for years preceding Lisa McVey's abduction. From confessing to torture, rape, and brutal slayings of 10 additional victims, to keeping twisted souvenirs from his kills, Long's stunning admissions appalled the nation. However, it was the devastating victim impact statements led by the courageously defiant Lisa herself that proved the true emotional turning point. As grieving loved ones confronted their unimaginable loss, yet extended heroic grace, they clung to Lisa's living example as a beacon of resilience through ultimate tragic darkness. Just as her miraculous escape set Long's demise in motion, Lisa stood resolute until justice was finally served by the harshest sentence. Though Bobby Joe Long's trial reached its paradoxical ending with his being sentenced to death, the scars inflicted on Lisa McVey and the Tampa community would never fully heal. In the weeks and months after his conviction, a period of emotional reckoning set in. For Lisa, the horrors she endured at the merciless hands of her tormentor continued to replay through vivid night terrors and an overwhelming sense of survivor's guilt. Why was she spared when so many other innocent young women crossed paths with this monster only to suffer unimaginable fates? While Lisa knew her tenacious actions helped stop Long's reign of terror, she still agonized over the tragic loss of life that could never be undone. In a craving for catharsis, she returned to the desolate roadside where Long had abandoned her for dead over 26 hours after her abduction began. Taking in the sprawling oak tree branches stretching towards the heavens, Lisa wept and fell to her knees, this time not in despair, but in grateful renewal. This transcendent life force, grounded in nature, reinforced her determination to emerge from tragedy, reborn with purpose. Just as the resilient oak withstands storms, Lisa vowed to plant spiritual roots and blossom into a force for good stemming from unfathomable darkness. This epiphany of perseverance over persecution not only marked a personal rebirth for Lisa, but also catalyzed a lifetime pursuit of helping other victims find their own voices. Through harrowing public speaking engagements bearing her rawest memories, lobbying for victims' rights legislation, and forging a career in law enforcement, Lisa channeled her pain into service as an unstoppable advocate. Her ongoing healing journey fostered solace by ensuring no survivor would ever again suffer the neglect and doubt she experienced in the aftermath of her abduction. Lisa refused to remain a tragic statistic, instead championing empowerment for all victims to share their truth and demand accountability. After all, her decision to remain steadfast upon facing such inhumanity played a pivotal role in finally ending Long's torturous criminal enterprise. In the years following Long's incarceration, activists like Lisa McVey further exposed institutional failings that paved a clear path for criminals like Long to repeatedly evade justice. Public outrage ignited at the revelations that his ex-wife's prior reports of domestic abuse went largely unaddressed due to systematic issues mishandling such cases. Similarly, damning accusations surfaced that police poorly allocated resources to previous missing persons and homicide probes involving Long's suspected victims. This alleged negligence delayed intervention that could have prevented the trail of bodies from multiplying. Officers and officials at multiple junctures displayed staggering inaction and distrust of victims reaching out for help. Had law enforcement thoroughly followed through on premonitory evidence and escalated charges accordingly each time, Long's horrific crimes may have been thwarted far sooner before spiraling into a killing spree. This harsh reckoning sparked a long overdue examination of how systemic shortcomings too often empowered predators to finally strike again. Out of the anguish, an extraordinary coalition of victim advocates nationwide rallied to overhaul protocols and legislation to better protect vulnerable members of society. Key reforms involve stringently tracking domestic abuse and sexual violence across jurisdictions, rather than localized record suppression that allowed abusers to operate under the radar when changing locations. Forensic documentation and data sharing processes were also revolutionized on local and federal levels to expedite connecting seemingly isolated dots during violent crime investigations. Crucially, the revamped criminal justice model mandated robust accountability measures to prevent short-sighted dismissals of disturbing incident reports. This transformative progress served as a hard-fought consolation to ease the generational trauma inflicted on countless families grieving loved ones senselessly taken too soon by violent predators like Bobby Joe Long. Though this renewed focus on justice over injustice could never reverse the heartbreaking losses, it enshrined a worthy legacy of making the world safer moving forward. Years after Bobby Joe Long's final breath through his execution, Lisa McVey defiantly held true to her solemn vow. Through her endless resiliency, she prevailed despite insurmountable trauma to not just survive, but to unapologetically thrive by using her story as a force for positive change. After dedicating herself to advocacy and earning hard-won vindication, Lisa's journey ultimately guided her home to serve on the same police force that helped rescue her decades earlier. Throughout her career, she tapped into the unspeakable depths of her personal anguish to provide future victims with the empathetic understanding and resolute support so lacking in her own darkest hours. As a compassionate first responder and victim advocate, now married Officer Lisa Noland became a beacon of hope for those suffering in silence. She let struggling souls know they were not alone by openly sharing the intimate horrors of her abduction while embodying the awesome power of perseverance to endure and heal. On each call involving abuse, assault, and unimaginable loss, Lisa cradled the victims in her nurturing empathy while assuring them of unwavering solidarity. Where societal apathy and systemic negligence had once threatened to destroy Lisa, she struck back by radiating the empowered resilience to uplift and embolden others. Her living proof that even life's most harrowing tribulations could be overcome through courage, faith, and determination offered the greatest gift, the eternal light of inspiration when hope seemed extinguished. In imparting first-hand wisdom forged in unspeakable darkness, Officer Noland fulfilled her truest purpose as a survivor by guiding others still trapped in their anguish back towards the radiant path of perseverance and healing. What do you think? Could the systemic injustices and societal failures exposed in Lisa McVey's tragic case have been avoided under a reformed justice model prioritizing vigilance over negligence? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay safe out there.